Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about something that affects too many people, diabetes, and talk about what's available to help and what you should and shouldn't be doing and some of the options. Because there's a lot of resources available to people who have diabetes, and we'll find out a lot more about it tonight. Why don't we start with an introduction?
Hello, my name is Caron Grupposo. I'm a registered nurse and a certified diabetes educator. I work for Milford Regional Physician Group, and I lead a team of nurses and dietitians, and we help patients with diabetes.
Caron, what is diabetes?
There's a lot of myths about diabetes, so that's an excellent question. We always think of diabetes as being a sugar problem and don't eat too much sugar, but diabetes is really an insulin problem. So the way that our body works is in order for us to process our food, and food turns into sugar and makes energy. The way that sugar gets into our cells to make energy is with insulin. So somebody that has type 1 diabetes, that's a problem with their immune system, where their body has attacked the cells that make insulin. So that person would need shots of insulin in order to process their food. Type 2 diabetes is a little bit more common, and that is an insulin resistance problem. So in that group of people, you make enough insulin initially, but your cells aren't sensitive to it. So the insulin's not attaching to the cells, and therefore the sugar can't get into the cells to make energy. The message gets sent back to the pancreas and says, make more insulin and more insulin and more insulin. So eventually, somebody with type 2 diabetes, their pancreas can start to burn out, and sometimes they need to inject insulin as well.
So now, when you say it's an insulin issue, is it genetic? Is it because I'm a fat old rotund man?
No, that's the myth. Everybody thinks it's something I ate or it's because I'm overweight that I get diabetes, and that's not true. If I'm having trouble processing my insulin, then if I have extra weight or extra cells that need that insulin, that can be a problem. So sometimes when somebody that's overweight loses weight, they say, I'm cured. And that's because they maybe lost 20 pounds. So that's 20 pounds less cells that no longer need insulin. So my pancreas doesn't have to make as much insulin. But really anybody can get diabetes. We see patients that are thin that have diabetes. So that's someone that couldn't use weight loss to help them. They do find genetic ties to both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So many clients that we meet with will say, do you have diabetes in your family? Now, sometimes people say no, but years ago we didn't test everybody for diabetes like we do today. So my next question to them is always, do you have any heart disease in your family? Heart attacks, strokes, things of that nature, because heart disease is the #1 complication of diabetes. So if they say, I don't have diabetes, but I have heart disease, then there was probably some diabetes that was just undiagnosed.
So what does insulin have to do with heart disease?
So the insulin doesn't cause the heart disease, but if I don't get my sugar into my cells with the insulin, then the sugar stays in my blood. And too much sugar in my blood acts like sandpaper. So if you've ever put too much sugar in a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and you can put your spoon in it, and when you take the spoon out, you see the little grains. Think about that same thing happening in your body. So when your sugars are high in your bloodstream, it's going through your body and it acts just like sandpaper. It starts wearing away at the vessels. And that's what can cause damage or problems from diabetes over time. So one day of high sugars doesn't cause a problem, but day after day, year after year of these elevated sugars starts to wear away at the vessels, and especially the vessels of the heart, because the heart pumps the blood to the whole body. But really, that being said, all of your major organs can have problems if you leave your diabetes uncontrolled and you leave your sugars too high.
Now, how do I know if my sugar is high?
So if you've never been diagnosed with diabetes before, seeing your regular primary care doctor is a good place to start, because most doctors, when they do a physical, will check just a plain blood sugar. If your blood sugar is high, they'll send you for more extensive testing. So people that tend to never see a doctor, some people never go to the doctor, then one day they may get symptoms of high blood sugar, and we have no idea of knowing how long they've had diabetes. But typically, if you go have your physical every year, they're going to test for that, and it's going to be caught earlier. And catching diabetes early is really the key, so that you don't have high blood sugars for an extended period of time, because that tends to be what causes the damage.
But now you're saying it wears out the blood vessels? So
It doesn't necessarily wear them out, but it scratches at them, and anywhere that's sweet and sticky, it's going to stick to cholesterol, and so it's going to kind of harden the artery, or it can cause swelling of the artery. So a lot of people have something called retinopathy, which is damage to the eye or swelling in the back of the eye. It can also go to your kidneys, so people can have reduced kidney function, which if left untreated can cause kidney failure and need for things like dialysis or kidney transplants. It can also go to, say, your feet, which if you're not getting good blood flow to your feet can lead to amputations. So it really can affect all of your major organs.
Now, when I think about diabetes, and I'm a type 2 diabetic, I always thought it was because I was old and rotund.
Nope. Not true.
But losing weight can help because that takes the strain off the use.
Absolutely, because by losing some weight, your body doesn't need to work as hard because it has less cells that it needs to give insulin to. So your whole body is full of cells, and every cell needs insulin to function. So if you have less of them, then that pancreas doesn't have to work as hard.
And if it doesn't have to work as hard, it'll use up the sugar more effectively.
Correct. So that's why, too, watching what you eat and how often you're eating it is effective as well. Because if I eat a big meal all at one time, my body has to work really hard to break that down. But if I eat smaller, more frequent meals, it gives my body a chance to break down the food and put it into the cells to be made into energy. So it's not sitting in my bloodstream quite as long, which is good. And higher fiber foods are better as well, because it takes a little bit longer for my body to break those down, so it's not getting right into the bloodstream all at one time.
Well, isn't it easier for the body to break down simple sugars and processed sugars?
It is, but that means it's all being dumped right into the bloodstream at one time.
All the sugar?
All the sugar. So if I have like juice or regular soda, that's pretty much going to get into my bloodstream within 15 minutes. If I have something that's higher in fiber, my body has to work on that and pull out the sugar slowly. So that gives my body a chance to process the sugar and put it into the cells for energy before it's building up into the blood.
Well, it seems like people are becoming more aware, because when I grew up, I had a Coke. I had no idea, Tab or whatever was like, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And then I start finding out how much sugar is in a Coke.
Yeah. A whole day's worth of sugar is in a Coke.
So my average intake or average optimal intake, I drink a can of Coke in the or any soda, not just picking on Coke.
Yeah.
And I'm done for the day.
Any juice. Juice is the same. Some people say, I don't have soda, but I have juice, and juice is healthy. It's not that juice is not healthy, but it's high in sugar. It takes 4 or 5 oranges to get a small cup of juice. So I'd rather a person eat an orange because it's high in fiber, and it's going to have less sugar than even a small glass of juice is going to have.
Well, how about diet soda?
So diet soda doesn't have glucose, so it's not going to raise your blood sugar as far as that's concerned. But some people are affected by artificial sweeteners. Some people report having things like headaches because it is chemically based, most of the artificial sweeteners that are out there. Stevia is probably the most natural because that comes from a stevia plant. But all the other ones like aspartame, and I'm not picking on one over another, they're all made, with some type of chemical, whether it's sugars that chemicals are added, those are called sugar alcohols, and those are
That's the
sugar.
yellow one.
That's the yellow one. And when you take that in, it is sugar, but they add a molecule to it so that your body breaks it down differently, and it basically just passes right through you so that it's not absorbed. So that's a good one too, but there is a little bit of chemicals there as well. So we just kind of put that out there to people so that they can watch for any side effects.
Well, I was always amazed because when we started back in the ancient days with cyclamates, then it was those are bad. So we're going to go to the next one. And then the next. So now you get blue, yellow, pink,
Yeah.
and green.
Yeah. The green is the stevia.
The green is the stevia. The yellow is the modified carbohydrate.
Yeah.
L-phenylalanine trypsin is blue.
Is blue.
Now, is that better, worse?
They're not better or worse. Like I said, the most natural is going to be the stevia
The green.
brand, the green. The other ones are chemically based, and some people have been taking those in and tolerate them well. They don't feel sick with them, and if they're tolerating it well, I say that's great. I wouldn't do large amounts because too much of anything is not good for you.
Yeah, but when you say large amounts, I remember when they did the saccharin studies.
Yeah.
And they said how bad it was if you took 300 cans of saccharin a day.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to live on the bathrooms.
Yeah, and that study was done on very small laboratory animals, and it was way more, like you said, 300 cans. Well, no adult's going to have that in a day, or child. So it wasn't really the best study. And it's still around, and a lot of people consume it and are fine with it. So it's a personal choice. I tell people, do your research. If it makes you feel ill, that it's definitely not the one for you.
But if I take pink, and I don't feel any side effects.
Perfect.
Same with blue, the L-phenylalanine.
Yeah, so the biggest difference with those is you can't cook with it. So because it's a chemical-based product, and if it gets heated, it changes its makeup, makes it bitter. So it's only in cold things. So it's usually in like beverages, puddings, things of that nature. Where Splenda you can cook with. So it kind of looks at, what are you looking for?
Well,
Now also keep in mind, regular sugar is only 5 grams of carbohydrate. So if you're just going to have 1 teaspoon of sugar, that's perfectly fine. But when you look at something like a soda, that might have 40 teaspoons of sugar. So it's just the amount that you're having in the product.
So now I go to my primary care, and they're doing a quick scan, and that's where I'm going to learn if my sugars are off.
Yes. And then if you get diagnosed with diabetes, then I strongly recommend that everybody that has diabetes monitor their blood sugar. So they can learn not only about diabetes, but about them specifically. People always come into my office and they ask me, what can I eat and what can I do to get my blood sugars down? And I can give you some tips on things that tend to be helpful, but everybody's body is different. So to learn what works best for you, I recommend monitoring.
So pricking your finger.
Well, there's a few options that are available these days. So we have pricking your finger, which will give you what your blood sugar is at one moment in time. And then if you've watched TV recently, there's always commercials on...
I got that Klingon thing.
Yes, continuous glucose monitoring. So those are sensors that instead of taking blood from your bloodstream, like your finger does, it sits in interstitial fluid, which is kind of the soft stuff that's underneath our skin so your skin doesn't stick to your bones. And that's monitoring your blood sugar every 5 minutes. And you're able to see it either on a reader or a cell phone. And it will alarm at you if your blood sugars are going low or going high. And so what I recommend that people do is, eat your meals and see how different foods affect you. See what happens when you exercise. See what happens when different portions are given of different items. And it kind of helps you realize what you can do more of and what maybe I shouldn't do as often because, that really made my sugars go up for an extended period of time.
Now, when you talk about extended, so I wake up in the morning, and target range is, 80 to 120?
Yeah.
What are the units? 80 what?
Oh, milligrams per deciliter.
Okay.
If you're in the United States.
So mgs per deciliter, but it's 80 to 120, you're happy.
Yeah. If you're using a sensor, then they recommend being anywhere from 70 to 180, since it's continuous glucose sensing. So they use something called time in range, and you want to have your time in range be 70% or better, and that's being between 70 and 180.
So I could be 180 and be perfectly normal in the morning?
Well, in the sensor world, they're looking at all times of day, so they're also looking at after you've eaten. When you're just using a monitor, then they recommend the mornings to be that 80 to 120 range.
Now, after I eat, if I was to check my sugar, what would it normally go up to?
So everybody's a little bit different, but 2 hours after eating, ideally you want to be under that 180.
So it can go over 200
Initially,
initially?
yes. And then your body should react and bring it down, and at the 2 hour mark, you should be at 180.
So if I was at
Less.
300 after a meal, would that be warning Will Robinson we have a problem?
Yes. So you would want to ask yourself, what did I have? What could I do differently?
So if I go up 252 to 300, there's a problem there.
There's a problem there, if it's staying up.
2 hours later, if it comes, it can go up that high and then come back down 2 hours later?
Yep, your blood sugar's always moving. So it's just depending on how long it's keeping you high. I mean, there's 24 hours in a day, so if I eat and my blood sugar stays high for 4 hours for each meal, and I eat 3 times a day, that's 12 hours. That's me staying high for half of my day. And that's what increases, there's a test that they do called an A1C that looks at the dead blood cells that are in our body. And these dead blood cells, they last, so you make brand new blood cells every day, they live with you for 3 months, and then they die off. So when they look at these dead blood cells, they look at how much sugar is stuck to them, and they get an average blood sugar for the last 3 months. So when you do a finger stick, it's one moment in time. But the A1C, like I said, tells how you've been doing overall for the last 3 months. And the American Diabetes Association recommends your A1C to be less than 7.
7.
It's kind of the magic number. And a 7 is equal to an average blood sugar of 154 for the day,
Oh,
just to kind of put that in perspective. Now, normal A1C for someone that doesn't have diabetes is less than 5.9.
so less, you're saying 6 is normal, 7 is warning, and as you go higher, that's a problem.
Yeah, so 6 to 6.5 is considered pre-diabetes, and then once you reach 6.5 and above, that would be a diagnosis of diabetes, according to the American Diabetes Association.
So now, more and more, I'm seeing on TV all these ads. What do, I mean, my physician will tell me for me,
Yes.
but, you know, when I think of the standard, metformin is kind of a standard.
There's so many different ways to treat diabetes, so it really depends on your health. I mean, like you said, your doctor would be able to kind of look at everything and see what's best for you. The good news is it's not one size fits all. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and as time goes on, there's more and more options that providers can use to help control diabetes, which is good. Even the insulins have gotten better, and they act more like our natural insulin in our body does. Where years ago, insulins didn't necessarily work the way that our bodies worked, so you had to eat a lot of extra food in order to not go low, or trying to get your sugars
Now,
where
I'm
it needed
totally
to be.
confused over when you say the insulins. Insulin is a chemical.
It's a hormone that your body makes, and when it was first discovered, so early insulin we got from animals. So we used to have beef and pork insulin that people would take. And it wasn't very refined. They would purify it, but one vial wasn't necessarily like the next vial because every animal's insulin strength is a little bit different. So in 1999, animal insulins went off the market, and now they have synthetic insulins that work in different ways. So there's insulins that are very flat, that give you little bits of insulin all day long. And then they have meal insulins that you take right before you eat. And when you take it, they start to work in 10 minutes. They work their hardest in a half hour to an hour and a half, and they're out of your system in like 3 to 4 hours. So they're basically to work just with food.
So it's more like a protein. Is it a quaternary structure that changes?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Because I'm just thinking, when I thought of insulin, I didn't think of it as a hormone or protein.
Yeah, it's definitely a hormone that your body makes.
I thought of
One of
it as a
many.
chemical and said insulin is insulin.
Yeah, so insulin's one of the more natural medications that you can have because that's what your body naturally makes. Where a lot of the pills that are on the market and even some of the injectables, they're not insulin, but they just help your body use its own insulin more efficiently. Is really
So
its
that's
goal.
things like glipizide or whatever?
Yeah, that would be another class of medication.
So, you have all these medications you hear on TV.
Yep.
And I mean, I love, what was it, the Trulicity one? It'll help you lower your sugar level. But by the way, you rotund people that are trying to lose weight, it does help lose weight too.
Yep.
What mechanism does something like Trulicity use?
That's a class called a GLP-1, and it works on a lot of different parts of the body. So it helps insulin resistance, so it helps the cells be a little more sensitive to insulin. It also helps send a message to your brain so that you're not as hungry.
I'm not as hungry?
Not as hungry. So that's where you get the weight loss from. But some people do complain of side effects with it. They can cause nausea, upset stomach, things of that nature. Not that that's going to happen to everybody, but that's why you want to sit with your provider, talk about the medications, talk about the side effects, because most medications have side effects as well. And then together you kind of figure out what's going to work best for you and your body.
Yeah, but Karen, in a way, I almost envy the people that get side effects.
Yeah?
Because,
Depends on what those side effects are.
well,
I
it
think.
depends on, yes.
Yes.
The potato chip people that had that leakage was not a side effect that anybody would ever.
No.
But, you think about it, you've got people, like I've been asymptomatic forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough because a physician will say, we changed your medicine to this. How does it affect you? It didn't. I felt good before. I feel good now.
Yeah. Well, feeling good is good, but I always have people look back at what their blood sugars are doing. Because some people tell me, I feel fine, but if their blood sugar's high, then damage is being done.
Yeah.
And we don't want to wait until damage is done because damage is hard to reverse if they can reverse it at all. So definitely being proactive and preventative is definitely the better option. So sometimes that means medication, but a lot of times it's just diet and exercise. Helping as well, so looking at all of your options. But if your provider decides that medication is the way to go, if you're having side effects, you need to let them know because they don't want to put you on medication and have you have side effects.
What kind of side effects are typical?
There's so many different medications out there and they all have different side effects. And everybody is different. So some people will come to me and they'll say, I have a friend or my spouse takes this and they're doing well on it. I want that. Well, that may work well for them, but might not be the right thing for you because of either your health conditions or it just may have worked better for them and it's not working for you. So everybody is different. So that's really when getting a customized plan is so important.
Was that why they mix the different medications?
Yeah, sometimes people are on more than one medication. Usually
Okay.
they start with one and make adjustments.
Because, I
as
remember
needed.
it was metformin. And then as I got a little older and my sugar started creeping, and went to glipizide and metformin.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the harpoon, which, I mean, realistically, compared to what was available to diabetics decades ago, these little pens are pretty easy and simple to use.
Yes, I agree with that. And the needles that are attached to these pens and these syringes are very small compared to what they were years ago. They're like 4 millimeters as opposed to a little over 12 millimeters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I never even thought of the length. I thought of the gauge.
Yep, the gauge too has gotten
Because
smaller.
28 versus 33, I mean, I felt the difference
Absolutely.
when I had this
Absolutely.
28 harpoon going into my fingertip every day.
Yep. But these newer medications, or any of these medications, insulin included, they don't need to go into your muscle. They just need to sit underneath your skin. So we just need a small little needle to get it there. And
That's
same
why
thing-
you can do your belly or...
Yep.
Is there any better place to inject than another?
Again, everybody is different. It kind of depends on the person. I like to recommend the abdomen because you can use both hands to, manage your giving of your insulin or medications at that site. If you're giving your arm, sometimes that's awkward because you can't use the arm you're injecting into.
Kind of hard to reach across.
Yeah, but if a loved one is giving it to you, then your arm is perfectly fine. If I'm somebody that uses my arms a lot or uses my legs a lot, so say I'm a runner, I probably don't want to put my medicine in my leg if I run, because that's going to maybe make me use my medicine a little bit more quickly, because it's going to heat up the medicine, and some of the medicines, like I said, are very slow acting, so it may make it work faster and run out faster as
Now,
well.
it always amazes me that you don't have to inject it into the bloodstream. You know, you hit your leg, you hit your belly.
Mm-hmm.
How long? I mean, it's going to spread out pretty quick.
It is, but it's how the molecules are made. So they cloak them in something so that they get absorbed slowly or fast, depending upon what type of medication it is.
Now, has insulin changed much over the last few decades?
Yes. Like I said, the actions of it have. There used to be, they would call intermediate insulins, that you would give it and then it would take a little while to work, and then it would peak and then it would leave. So people had to do a lot of snacking for when their insulin was peaking. Now, a lot of the insulins are peakless and flat, and then you just take meal insulin at the times that you eat. So it gives people a little bit more flexibility. Before, it was like if you took morning insulin, you had to have a mid-morning snack or that person might go low. With the newer insulins, you can eat when you want to eat and take the insulin at that time.
Because I know there's been a lot of controversy over medication like insulin that's been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you start seeing the prices skyrocket. And anybody who knows the industry knows that the cost of making meds is nothing. It's the R&D and all the testing that goes into it. But if you haven't changed it in 40 years,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to justify going up 10-20% a year.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely has been newer insulins, different concentrations of insulin, different types of pens have come up over time. But I agree, cost is definitely an issue. They're working on different things. They don't really have generic insulins because only a few companies make insulin, but they're having something, they call it biosimilar. So it's made very similarly, but it's made by another company that also makes insulin. So there are some lower cost options coming out. So I encourage people to talk to their healthcare provider if their insulin's costing them a lot of money.
Well, the whole topic of biosimilars has been hot for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you tie the in vitro to the in vivo outcomes? Because a lot of the generics, it's really interesting to see how the in vitro, the out-of-body testing, the chemical testing, is dead on. And then you put it in the body and the in vivo, nope, doesn't work the same. So I don't know where it's going to come out, but obviously the whole area of biosimilars is something that the FDA is really looking hard at.
Yeah, well, there's already some that are out for insulins, and they're working really well. They're still not super inexpensive, though, I find, because pills are very inexpensive to make, but insulin still takes technique and needs to be kept cold, and, so I think there's a lot more to it. But I know, the government is talking about different programs to lessen the cost of insulin.
Well, any biologic, if you look at any protein, any hormone, any biologic is going to be a lot more difficult, one, to manufacture consistently,
Yeah.
but two, to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can ship, pills come in little bubble pack envelopes
Yep.
that cost next to nothing to ship.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you look at hormones like insulin, and they have to come in temperature-controlled boxes, which now quadruple or more the price of shipping.
Yeah.
But I worry more about some, and this sounds horrible and I apologize, but some of the less educated people who don't really watch how they store insulin.
Yeah, I mean, how you store insulin is very important, especially in these summer months. Like if you leave your insulin in the car in the summer, it could potentially become not useful. You would inject it, but your sugars would still remain high.
I remember we were overseas talking to a manufacturer, and we talked about stability of different medications. And I said, I have the ultimate way of testing any drug. And they said, what's that? I said, my daughter's soccer bag. And they looked at me and said, what are you talking about? I said, put anything in her soccer bag. During the summer, it's sitting out in 100-degree heat.
Oh, okay.
During the winter, it's frozen because we're still playing soccer.
Yeah. Well, any of those liquid medicines for diabetes, you don't want them to, they say right on them, don't freeze and, keep at room temperature, basically. Insulins and other biologics should be kept in the fridge until it's ready to be used.
And that's the hardest thing because a lot of people don't understand. When you say, what's the typical temperature? Well, 4 degrees. And they say, well, 4? That's frozen. I said, no, centigrade.
Yeah.
Science community, who talks in Fahrenheit?
Yeah.
But the normal American user wouldn't understand 4 degrees.
Yeah.
And wouldn't understand freeze-thaw cycles. When you start looking at some of these proteins and all, and they have a configuration, and I always laugh because I always brought it up and said, if you have a certain enzyme and it reacts like this, you freeze it and it becomes distorted. Now when it goes to act, it's still acting the same way,
Yeah.
but trying to pick up my cup of coffee like this would be more of a challenge. But it's hard to convince people. When you start looking at the average person who doesn't have a science background, who's not reasonably educated, they could take for granted that, I just left it out for a few days.
Yeah.
Right?
And then usually their sugars go up, and then they hopefully will seek health care.
I wonder about that because we're constantly testing puffers, oral sprays, because if you're not careful on certain, how do I put this, suspensions, like the snow globe effect, that you don't shake it well enough, then you get a lot more precipitation, so your first shots are really heavy. The end, if you're supposed to get 200 shots out of an inhaler, the end you could end up with just a propellant. So you get worse than a placebo effect because you're feeling the rush. And I always get scared that if you don't treat like insulin the way it's supposed to, you could have denatured insulin and you're still feeling the prick or the stabbing,
Yeah.
but it may have no effect for you.
Yeah.
And your sugars could go up, and you're saying, yes, I'm injecting every day like I'm supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, we see that sometimes where people are injecting, their sugars were good, now all of a sudden they're high. So I always ask, well, what's different? Is there anything different with your meal plan? Anything different in your activity level? Have you been ill? And if the answers to all those things are no, then I'm going to ask about their medication. Have you been taking your medication? How do you store your medication?
See, and that's the key because, yes, I've been taking it. But if I don't have room in the fridge, I just put it on the side. And I'm not sure, I've never looked at the stability recommendations for how long insulin can stay out in the counter.
About a month, 28 days for most.
Oh, it's that long?
It is. It is. In an insulin pen, once you start using the pen, it should be left out at room temperature. It shouldn't go back into the fridge once you start using it.
Well, that's not bad at all then, realistically.
Yeah, unopened insulin should stay in the fridge, but once you open it, it should stay out because going in and out of the fridge, it expands and contracts and can cause bubbles to form in your pen.
That's not good.
I know. That's why we say room temperature.
I was gonna say,
and that's what the little package insert says, but they're so small, I don't think many people read those.
No, the label claims.
Yes, and that's where it tells you that once you start using it to keep it at room temperature.
Yeah, I always thought Tolstoy and his offspring worked at the FDA. because the FDA is known for never saying anything clearly in a sentence that they couldn't say vaguely in a paragraph or two. But I can't imagine, I don't think I've ever read it.
It's very tiny.
Oh, the print
inserts,
alone to
yeah.
get it up.
Yeah. So that's why education is so important. We do a lot of that, going through how your medication works,
Now,
any
it
side
seems,
effects, how do you store
it
it, how do you
seems
take
like
it.
the insurance companies have woken up to prevention being more cost-effective than treatment. Because all of a sudden, I'm getting calls from the insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not from them, but their proxies.
Yep.
To say, how is your diabetes?
Yeah.
Can we hook you up with a specialist? Now, that's not even as good as you, because this is somebody on the phone, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and different approaches work well for different people. So some people, that is good for them, that they, don't have time for appointments, but they would really like that check-in by telephone. So I tell people, take advantage of anything you can and anything that you're finding helpful, because really diabetes is a disease that you manage on the day-to-day. And the people who call you on your phone and your healthcare providers, they're there to help support you, but they're not there, day to day. I'm not in your kitchen making your meals, those are decisions that you need to make. So we can work together and come up with plans, and I may give suggestions on things, but ultimately, the patient has to go home and, fulfill these. So, trying to find out what's going to work best for me. What's the best exercise plan or best meal plan that I can do?
But realistically, I went and talked to you, and I was making unintelligent decisions. And my blood sugar was up at 200, and I saw the look on your face, and you started using words that scared the heck out of me. And a day later, I'm at 120. Okay, what did I do differently? Well, no snacks. Or what I had for lunch now is keto.
Okay.
And all of a sudden I'm down at 120, which is not perfect, but for a rotundo man like me, 120 is a lot better than 200.
Yeah, 120 is great. And everyone's different. I don't want people not to come see me because they're going to think I'm going to say scary things. But yeah,
No, it wasn't
being
scary.
aware.
It was just realistic to say, you can control this. Who doesn't love a good donut?
And it's not that you can't ever have a donut, but it's everything in moderation. So I'm not, people say, I'm not going to go see her, she's going to take away all my snacks. No, but it's being aware of what's on a label. And, it's definitely, if I'm going to have a snack that's a little higher in carbohydrate, I should have it earlier in my day when I'm active and I'm more apt to burn it out. As opposed to right before I go to bed, if I eat, an ice cream sundae, it's going to sit with me all night and into the next morning and have trouble burning that off.
And again, I bagged 120, but I had a little Dairy Queen ice cream. It was great. We were after dinner. My daughter's there. My darling bride's there. And it was funny because they're arguing who's going to take the grandkids to Dairy
Good
Queen.
argument.
And I'm laughing and they said, what's so funny? I said, I know where this is going. Neither of you can decide who's going to take them. So I know who's going to take them. So 3 of us, my granddaughter, my grandson, and I went to Dairy Queen. And I got the little itty bitty ice cream. And I didn't eat the cone. I ate just the top.
Yeah.
So mentally, I felt like I was cheating. It felt good.
Yeah.
But in the old days, I had the large, and I ate the whole thing.
Yeah, so those are adjustments that you can make. It's not that you can't ever have ice cream, but it's the smaller amounts, and that's where the meter comes in handy, because you can, like you said, test the next day. That was good. You kind of know what your body can handle and break down. So it's finding those things. People always come in and say, what can I eat? And I have to say, I don't really know. I can tell you things that are higher in carbohydrate and how to read a label and things that tend to affect most people. But the best way for you to know what affects you is by using a monitor and seeing.
Yeah, but you can test because Chinese food. I love Chinese food. Those dumplings.
It affects everybody.
You know, but you sit there and say, the next morning when I wake up and I'm at 200, okay, maybe I shouldn't have had the fourth dumpling.
That's what I say. We always blame poor Chinese food, but sometimes maybe when I have it, I might make a little bit different choices. Maybe stay away from the fried things, because carbohydrate or sugar makes your sugars go up, but fat tends to be what keeps it up for a long period of time, kind of the combination of the two.
And it's amazing because if you were to tell me a dozen years ago about keto,
Mm-hmm.
it would have rang right true with veggie and yuck. I can't eat that stuff. It's like drinking diet soda. You know, I'm not gonna. Now all of a sudden, I haven't had a Coke in I don't know how long. I know a few months ago they gave me a Coke at a restaurant instead of a Diet Coke, and boy did I taste the difference right there.
Yeah, it's all kind of what you're used to.
But now my darling bride and my ungrateful offspring number one, they do everything keto. Now the bread is $7 a loaf, but I can have bread.
Yeah.
You know, I
And your
can.
body needs some carbohydrate. So low carb is good, but don't do no carb. You do need some
No, but I mean,
fruits, vegetables. Don't cut out
All of a
whole food
sudden in the
groups.
morning, I get to have 2 waffles and bacon. I'm in heaven. I've got 2 waffles. They're keto waffles, so initially it tasted a little different, but I get to have that. For lunch, she packs me my little dog food containers, the little packages. But they taste good. It's chili, it's sloppy joes, it's things that I like eating.
Good, that's important. Don't eat anything that doesn't taste good. There's a lot of options out there today, so it's just finding what's going to work best for you.
And I think that's the biggest thing because initially, if I ate my Chinese food, I know my blood sugar is going to shoot. But if I started going to, okay, I'll have this much, 2 dumplings,
Yeah.
not the 4 or 6 that I always loved.
Yeah.
And I could see that, okay, if I know I'm going to have Chinese tonight, my lunch is going to be sparse. But here's a question. Strange, I think my liver betrays me, is if I don't eat.
Your sugar goes up.
Yeah, it's like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, stop this. I didn't eat. My sugar, how can it go up?
Because your liver makes sugar. Because remember I said your body runs off of sugar. Insulin opens the door and the sugar needs to go in. We get sugar from the food we eat. So it's sugar or carbohydrate. So carbohydrate is sugar and anything your body turns into sugar. So not eating any carbohydrate or sugar at all, your body's going to make it. So that's
Yeah.
why it's important to have some carbohydrate with every meal. And you can't eat a big meal and then not eat all day. Your body doesn't work that way. Some people say, oh, I'm going to not eat all day so I can have that big
But
Chinese dinner.
That's my mind.
I know.
I'm not going to do breakfast. I'm not going to do lunch. Boy, I'm going to get rewarded by having 4 dumplings.
Yeah, no. You're better off having a small breakfast and a small lunch and then the dinner. And we always don't want to mention, because everybody hates it, but exercise or activity, that makes your cells more sensitive to your insulin. So it helps your body use it a little bit more efficiently. So exercise or activity is so important, and more important even than some of the medications that are out there and helping bring blood sugars down.
You know, it's amazing because I know the value of exercise. Up until a couple of years ago, I was playing hockey twice a week. Then my knees started getting tired and chasing 20-year-olds when you're 60. It was not a pretty picture. I know I was supposed to exercise. But what did it for me is when my oldest brought my grandkids over and we all went down to the gym together. My darling bride is so cool. She bought this little tiny exercise bike which does nothing for the kids, but keeps them busy.
Ah.
So all of a sudden, instead of being this horrible experience of going downstairs, you know, and I put the gym right downstairs, and I've got treadmills and bikes and exercise machines, everything down there. But it was the gravitational pull or repulsion of me
Yeah.
going downstairs. Now all of a sudden, I get to spend time with my daughter. And we get to talk.
Yeah, that's great.
And all of a sudden it became a fun thing to do.
Great, that's even better.
And then when she throws in the grandkids,
Yeah.
because originally when we put the gym downstairs, it was to lure my daughter and her husband to get Lexi and Chris to come over, because they couldn't exercise with the kids, so they'd force us to play with our grandkids.
Oh, that's fun too.
And that was great. Now, it's not bad.
Yeah, good.
You know, I look forward to leaving the office, getting home,
Good.
and meeting her.
Good.
So I think what you said is really important, that what turned the exercise routine from drudgery to enjoyment was that I get to spend time with my daughter.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely exercising with somebody helps you more, because when you feel like, "Oh, I don't want to do it," and then she shows up, then it's like, "Oh, I have to do it," you know, and it becomes a little bit more accountability, you know, of
Now,
making sure you're doing it.
my cardiologist said there's an optimum period that we should do about 30 minutes. Is that about right for most people?
Yeah, the Diabetes Association recommends 150 minutes a week. However,
That's what he said. He said 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day.
I tell people any type of activity is good activity. Cardiologists do want you to get your heart rate up for your heart health, but insulin sensitivity, it's any type of movement. So if somebody tells me they're not ready to commit to an exercise program, I say, okay, well, when you go to the store, try to park a little further. Or, you know, when you get into the store, if you have trouble walking, use the carriage or the cart, and you know, make a couple of laps around. These stores are big, and get your activity in that way. Or some of my clients like the peddler. It's just a set of pedals that you can either put on a table and use it as an arm bike, or you can put it on the floor. And if you said, "Oh, this is boring," well, find a show that you like. They could watch your show.
That would put them to sleep.
Oh no! But if they know that a show is a half an hour, then they've gotten their half hour's worth of activity in, and that's going to make
that's
themselves
something
more
that
sensitive.
really, especially today's day and age, when you binge watch. Alexi has told me that starting tomorrow, there's some new series that came on Netflix.
Ah.
Something that feels like Game of Thrones, she said, but we're going to watch it every day when we exercise. And that, to me, is going to feel easy, because if it's 40 minutes of show, I just got to watch one show.
Yeah, and then you got your time in.
And the time goes by.
Yeah.
You know, and it all, you know, it's hard because I used to ski a lot.
Yeah.
Right up until the kids were 12, because I would be going down the mountain saying, "Come on, hurry up, I'm waiting, I'm waiting." And as they turned 12, as my daughters turned 12, all of a sudden, they're now in front of me, waiting for me. And I think I just had to get over the fact that I can't keep up with them. You know, Lexi runs, so she'll do a 5K like it's nothing. I'm not going to do that.
No. Pick
But
your battles there.
That's, you know,
Especially with bad
I'll
knees.
do my thing on the bikes or the treadmill, and I'll go a little slower, but I'll get my exercise in.
Yeah, don't do anything to the point of pain. So if you have bad knees and then you're having a lot of pain, then you're going to stop exercising.
And I think that's the key, is make it fun.
Make it fun. Yeah.
Pick something, and it doesn't have to be, you know, for Lexi, it's running for a period of time. For me, it's kind of just moseying along.
Yeah, and that's perfect. Walking is great exercise. And I always recommend, you know, getting the okay from your healthcare provider, especially people that have, you know, heart issues or any other health issues. You want to make sure that you're okay for exercise. But starting off slow, starting off with walking. And if you're not a gym person, I mean, there's tons of stuff in our area. Milford has a wonderful bike path, which I can bike or I can walk. But trying to find some of those resources. And what I like about walking is it's free. You know, you do have to buy shoes, but it's not like you have to have a gym membership or buy any expensive equipment. It's just getting out and moving. And in the nice weather, you're getting fresh air, and that's good for mental health, because stress also causes blood sugars to go up. When we're stressed, we make stress hormone, and that kind of gets in the way of us processing our insulin and our sugars. So sometimes people say, my sugars are up and I didn't eat anything. And that's when I ask, anything.
And they're sitting there with their...
Yes. But I ask anything different with your meal plan. Are you eating more? Or your
Family
activity
situation.
level. Have you been sick? Is there any different stressors that are in your world? Because those are all things that are going to affect blood sugar.
It's interesting, because, as we start thinking about doing a little bit, like you say, walking is better than sitting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
As
know,
a society, we sit way too much.
I agree.
Yep.
I mean, I finally got, I think it was a hint. They bought me a desk at the office that
Yes.
goes up.
I've seen those. Yeah.
So now at least, it's not that I've gone the ultimate, which is they have desks with the treadmill.
Yes.
I don't think I want to be treadmilling in the office.
Yeah, you don't need to do that.
But at least getting me off my delicate derriere
Yeah,
is a better thing than sitting down all day.
yeah. And these newer smartwatches that people have, if you're sitting too long, they kind of buzz at you and tell you, hey, get up and move.
Yes, my daughter tried getting me one. I said, I'll smash it. I don't want it.
Yeah, I don't have one either, but patients have them, and some of them, they find them to be really helpful. So that's why I tell people, you have to find what's going to work for you. There's a lot of like online exercise things that people can do. Some of these video games have different exercise features to them that you can, pretend to play hockey or baseball, and it's fake baseball,
Well,
but it keeps you active, keeps you moving.
I think the biggest thing is, in the old days, you had your primary care physician. That was it. And insurance didn't cover but so many visits a year. Today, anybody like me, I would encourage to get out, and there's so many options.
Mhm.
But do something. We got to deal with the fact that New England has winter. So walking out in the snow is probably not a great thing for some people.
Right.
But you can, the high school has programs where you can walk around the high school. The senior center has, when Sue Clark came to us and said, I want to fund a gym upstairs at the senior center.
Oh, great.
Like, wait a minute, you're talking about old people like me. We're going to go to the gym in the senior center? Turns out the Zumba and Roomba and whatever bar they do is one of the most frequently used programs. She had to expand it.
Fabulous. That's great.
So, again, for people who can't get out to the gym or not comfortable,
Yeah.
you can have the senior center bus pick you up, go down. You're with people, with 20-year-olds going hor and all that
Yeah.
noise. Or the women don't have to deal with the manly men trying to look manly.
Yeah.
There's places that you can go be comfortable, and you already pay for them with your tax dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, take advantage of any of those things.
And I love the idea of, okay, I can walk around the high school. I'm tired of walking around the high school. Next month I'll walk the trail. Well, it's winter, so I'll go down to the senior center.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do.
Yeah, and the Milford Library used to have a walking tour of historic homes in Milford.
Ah.
You just kind of walked. A lot of things shut down with COVID, so I don't know if that still exists or not.
Next time I see Sue Edmonds, I'll ask. Because they do so much for the community at the library.
They do. They do. There's a lot of. lot
But
of stuff there.
again, it's amazing because town meeting is the group, 200 some people that are elected in Milford,
Mhm.
that control every dollar spent. And years ago, when towns around us were worrying about keeping their library open, town meeting allowed us to spend $1.5 million to expand the library. Because all of a sudden, people were coming in with their nooks and schnooks and
Yeah.
all these devices, and they needed bandwidth.
Yeah.
And Sue came to us and said, I just don't have the bandwidth to take care of it. So the academic part was taken care of. The physical part, there's so many different places.
Yeah.
But if I'm right, you would start with your primary care and then call the insurance company and find out what programs they offer.
Yeah, that's,
Because if somebody isn't willing to drive to Mendon to see you, well, they can answer their phone
absolutely.
and get somebody not as good as you, but better than not, to help them walk through their options.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of options for people today to stay healthy. And then if you're working on, meal plan and activity level and working with your primary care and the sugars still aren't where they need to be, then Milford Regional Physician Group, right where we are, there is 2 endocrinologists and a nurse practitioner. And an endocrinologist is a diabetes doctor, diabetes specialist.
And a lot of it now, from my understanding, is covered by insurance.
Yes, every insurance is a little different, but Medicare, since they're a big insurer, they cover when you're first diagnosed 10 hours in the first 12 months after diagnosis of diabetes education, and then every year after that you get 2 hours. And that diabetes education can be with the nurse or with the dietitian.
It's amazing, but you got to ask.
Yes. Yeah, they don't send that, oh, this is available. And pre-diabetes, they offer classes that are covered by Medicare and some insurances at the YMCAs. So the one in Franklin participates. They're called diabetes prevention programs. So people who have A1Cs that are below 6.5, but over 5.9 would qualify for those.
It's amazing. So people who are pre-diabetes, please consider talking to your physician.
Yeah, because there's a lot you can do. When I first started at Milford Regional, my job was basically to treat people with complications of diabetes. So once people had issues like the blindness or an amputation or a heart attack, then they would come to me to learn, testing and sometimes aggressive medications. And so I'm happy to say that now I see people a lot sooner. So even some of these people that are just over the line, you could do a lot with diet and exercise, get your blood flowing well, and we're seeing a lot less complications today. And people that do have complications, there's definitely better treatments and things that can be done to help them. So a lot of people said, oh, I've had diabetes for a long time, I don't need education. Well, there's a lot of new technology and new things that can help you. So just make sure that you're well informed, whether it be from someone like myself, or just do your research and figure out what are the things that are going to help me best.
Yeah, I've been riding a horse my whole life. I don't need to be educated on how to drive a car. I mean, over the last century, things have changed.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So like I said, I always ask people, what can I do to help you? What kind of support are you looking for?
And there we are very fortunate. Every time we peel back the layer on the onion, there's another service offered. The Milford Regional Medical Center, I always laugh, and I was born in the little red building, the little tiny red building back in the 50s. It's now turned into a world-class medical center. The physicians group offers treatment and experienced physicians that rival anywhere. But you got to ask. If you have a question, start with your primary care. Then go to the insurance companies and everywhere and learn what options are available to you. Because you may find that you can go see Miss Caron as part of your insurance package and get a good perspective. But the biggest thing is, don't put it off, because it doesn't get better on its own.
That's true.
Thank you for everything you do. As always, we hope this has brought some clarity to some questions. May tomorrow be a better day than today. And to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. And we look forward to seeing you at other shows.
Far too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just